Muscle cars are not your regular vehicles. They pack a lot of power, speed, and can intimidate even the most devilish drivers on the road. But of course, some models faded away as the years passed. But faded doesn't mean forgotten, as some of them made huge comebacks. That being said, here are 8 muscle cars that faded but came back. Big time. Number 8, Oldsmobile 442. The Oldsmobile 442 was a powerhouse in the 1960s and early 70s, flexing its muscles with a 7.5-liter V8 engine that pushed out an impressive 365 horsepower. If you were a muscle car enthusiast back then, hearing the roar of an Oldsmobile 442 probably sent shivers down your spine. But by the mid-70s, with stricter emissions regulations and soaring gas prices, the 442 became less of a muscle machine and more of a fuel-sipping cruiser. However, Oldsmobile wasn't ready to let the 442 disappear quietly. In the 1980s, they reintroduced the 442, but this time with a more refined but less powerful V8 engine. It wasn't quite the tire-shredding beast of its earlier years, but it still brought some muscle back into the Oldsmobile lineup. This 1980s revival gave car enthusiasts a much-needed reminder that the Oldsmobile 442 was still around, even if it had traded some of its brute force for better handling and luxury. Despite the changes, the 442's legacy remains strong, and it's still a favorite among muscle car collectors today. Number 7. The Ford Mustang GT 5.0 Fox Body. The Ford Mustang has been a symbol of American automotive freedom since it first hit the streets in 1964. But after the high performance of 60s Mustangs, Ford lost its way in the 70s with the Mustang II. Let's just say that the Mustang II was to muscle cars what fast food salads are to burgers. Not exactly what you signed up for. Thankfully, the 1980s brought the Fox Body Mustang GT 5.0 and everything changed. Ford went back to basics, stuffing a 5.0-liter V8 under the hood and giving the Mustang a modern yet aggressive design. The GT 5.0 had 225 horsepower, which might not sound like a lot today, but it was more than enough to burn rubber and leave people in the dust back in the 80s. The best part, the Fox Body Mustang wasn't just a muscle car. It was affordable, customizable, and available in both coupe and convertible models, making it an everyman's performance machine. The Fox Body became iconic, sparking a whole new wave of Mustang fandom and bringing Ford back into the muscle car conversation in a big way. You'd be hard-pressed to find a car show today without at least one tricked-out Fox Body proudly parked on display. Number 6. The Buick GNX. When you think of Buick, the word muscle probably doesn't come to mind. Buick was known for making comfortable, reliable cars for your grandparents, until the GNX burst onto the scene in 1987. The Buick Grand National GNX was a blacked-out turbocharged powerhouse that looked like it belonged to a villain from a sci-fi movie. Buick really leaned into the Darth Vader of muscle cars vibe, and it worked. Under the hood, the GNX packed a turbocharged 3.8-liter V6 engine that pumped out 276 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque. While that might seem modest compared to the massive V8s of the era, the GNX was a sleeper. It could go from 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds, making it faster than most of its V8 competitors at the time. The GNX became an instant classic, and although Buick only produced 547 of these bad boys, its reputation as one of the most unexpected muscle cars lives on. The GNX wasn't just a car, it was a statement, proving that Buick could throw down with the best of them. Number 5. The Chevrolet Camaro IROC-Z. The Camaro name is legendary in the muscle car world, but not all Camaros are created equal. By the 1980s, the Camaro had lost some of its muscle car cred as it became more about looks than performance. Then, in 1985, Chevy dropped the Camaro IROC-Z, and suddenly, the Camaro was cool again. Named after the International Race of Champions, IROC, The Camaro IROC-Z was more than just a trim package. It came with improved suspension, better handling, and most importantly, the option for a 5.7-liter V8 engine that cranked out 225 horsepower. It wasn't a drag strip monster, but it was fast enough to remind people that the Camaro was still in the muscle car game. The IROC-Z became an icon of the 80s, and while it might not have been the most powerful Camaro ever built, it made up for it with sheer style. Those signature stripes and the low-slung, aggressive stance made it a favorite among street racers and gearheads. Even today, the IROC-Z is a symbol of the 1980s muscle car culture, and it's highly sought after by collectors. Number 4. The Pontiac Firebird Trans Am. The Pontiac Firebird Trans Am is one of those cars that needs no introduction. Made famous by the Smokey and the Bandit movies, the Trans Am of the late 1970s became a cultural phenomenon. But like so many muscle cars of the time, the Trans Am started to fade as emissions regulations tightened, and fuel efficiency became more important than horsepower. By the mid-80s, the Firebird Trans Am was on life support. But Pontiac wasn't ready to throw in the towel just yet. They refreshed the Trans Am with new styling and more powerful engine options, including the 5.7-liter V8. It wasn't a full return to the glory days of the muscle car wars, but it was enough to keep the Trans Am relevant in a changing automotive landscape. The Trans Am's dramatic comeback wasn't just about performance, it was also about attitude. Pontiac leaned into the Trans Am's rebellious image, making it a favorite among younger drivers. Even though the Firebird was discontinued in 2002, the Trans Am's legacy endures, and it remains one of the most recognizable names in American muscle car history. Number 3. Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454. Back in the early 70s, the Chevelle SS 454 was a king among muscle cars. With its massive 7.4-liter V8 engine pushing out 450 horsepower, the SS 454 could shred tires like it was nobody's business. It was a street-legal drag racer, and it quickly earned a reputation as one of the most powerful muscle cars ever built. But as the 70s dragged on, the Chevelle, like so many other muscle cars, fell victim to stricter emission standards and the oil crisis. By 1973, the Chevelle SS was a shadow of its former self, and it was eventually discontinued. However, the Chevelle SS 454 has never really faded from the muscle car world. Thanks to its legendary performance and its status as one of the most desirable classic muscle cars, the SS 454 continues to dominate car shows and drag strips. Restored Chevelles regularly sell for big bucks at auctions, proving that while the Chevelle might have faded for a time, its legacy has only grown stronger. Number 2. The Dodge Challenger. Few muscle cars have made a comeback as spectacular as the Dodge Challenger. Originally introduced in 1970, the Challenger quickly became one of the most iconic muscle cars of the era. But as the 1970s wore on, the Challenger, like many of its contemporaries, was neutered by emissions regulations, and by 1974, it was discontinued. For decades, the Challenger remained a memory. But in 2008, Dodge brought it back, and they brought it back in style. The modern Challenger was everything muscle car fans had been waiting for. Retro styling, big V8 engines, and enough horsepower to tear up the streets. The return of the Challenger has been nothing short of epic, with models like the SRT Hellcat and the Demon pushing the limits of what a modern muscle car can do. The Hellcat's supercharged 6.2-liter V8 produces a mind-boggling 707 horsepower, making it one of the most powerful production cars in history. Dodge didn't just bring the Challenger back, they made sure it was better than ever. Number 1. The Ford Mustang Shelby GT 500. At the top of our list is the Ford Mustang Shelby GT 500, a car that has come back from the dead more times than we can count. The Shelby GT 500 was originally introduced in the late 60s as a high-performance version of the Mustang, with Carroll Shelby's magic touch turning it into a race-bred street-legal beast. But like so many muscle cars that we've talked about, the Shelby GT 500 faded into obscurity as emission standards tightened in the 70s. It wasn't until 2007 that Ford finally brought back the GT 500, and boy, they did it right. With a 5.4-liter supercharged V8 producing 500 horsepower, the modern GT500 was a throwback to the golden age of muscle cars, but with modern technology and refinement. The latest reiteration of the Shelby GT500 introduced in 2020 takes things to an entirely new level with a monstrous 760 horsepower under the hood. Ford didn't just revive the Shelby GT500. They made sure it would go down in history as one of the most powerful and insane muscle cars of all time. These 8 American muscle cars prove that while the muscle car scene might have faded at times, it was never truly gone. These vehicles have made epic comebacks, not just on the streets, but in movies, TV shows, music videos, and video games as well. With this in mind, you can bet your last drop of motor oil that the muscle car will live forever. Now, hit the comments section below and tell us which forgotten muscle car you would like to see make a comeback. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more awesome muscle car content. We'll see you down the road.